You remember they used to like us? In the old days?
He did. That's when we came in twice a day.
That's right. The days of heritage. Who was looking after heritage?
Brunel?
No, not Brunel, the young people. Which one?
Oh. Paige.
Paige.
Her with the red hair.
Oh, her. Yeah. Striking red hair.
You, Paige.
Yeah?
Tell us about the heritage you found out then.
Well, the tides were used a lot in our heritage.
Yeah, that's right. Tell them more.
That's what she's talking about.
Yeah.
Pick us up. Come on.
You were used for transporting goods.
We were.
Yeah. Lots of ships sailed.
And we say that there wouldn't be Bristol without us, without the tides, without heritage, would there?
Oh, that's
No.
right. Oh.
The tides shaped Bristol.
Hey, there's been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of heritage to research. Those kids had better get on with it.
You better get out there and look into the past. Yeah, think about the present and plan for the future.
Too right.
That's what you need to do. Get out there now. Go on, go on.
Do you think Bristol is properly in touch with its water heritage?
I'm sure bits of it are, but you know, in a way, one of the great achievements of Brunel is the floating harbour, and in a sense, the floating harbour takes us out of touch with our water heritage. So the tide doesn't go up and down here. People see the same water level all the time.
I actually think Bristol has a really unique relationship with its water, and that Bristol as a city is really connected to its water. I think in a way it's very easy kind of elsewhere to kind of forget about how water shapes a city, but in Bristol there are constant reminders. So you can be kind of down on the harbour side having a stroll and you'll see all this maritime history kind of in the new curtain, with installations like the SS Great Britain reminding you about how Bristol's heritage is built on its water.
I guess lots of people know that we have the world's second biggest tidal range, but probably that doesn't impinge very much on their everyday life. So one of Brunel's biggest achievements is also a PR disaster for the tides.
Bristol is one of the most important tidal places in the world, so we want to make the most of that. In other high tidal areas in Canada and Russia, they have really rural landscapes. So this is the most tidal urban landscape in the world.
I've been over to Nova Scotia, and going up the Bay of Fundy, it's really bizarre because it looks so like this, great big mud banks and a fast-flowing brown muddy river.
Yeah, I was talking to people in Nova Scotia too about the Bay of Fundy, and I said to them, is that highest tidal range in the world celebrated as a natural wonder? And they said yes.
Yes.
And it's in a more isolated position than this. We're right next to one of the major cities in Bristol, but no one celebrates this. I mean, what is that about? Because as a natural wonder, it's extraordinary.
So, what has this river seen? This sense of the great sort of sweeps of history. The Barclays sent a boat out to the New World 3 years before the Mayflower, the boat that took the Pilgrims.
Bristol's famous for Bristol, ship-shape and Bristol fashion. Treasure Island, one of the most famous adventure stories in the world, starts in Bristol in the middle of the night because they were reloading the boat at high tide before it was a floating harbour, and all the shops in Bristol were open in the middle of the night because that's when the tides were high. Lots of people worked in the docks and they worked to the tides and not to the day and night cycles.
So this is an extraordinarily tidal city, both physically but also, I think, metaphorically, because tides are about arrival and departure. Bristol has always been this place of exploration, so you've got this traffic and this tension between people leaving Bristol and people arriving in Bristol. So whether it's Cabot going out to find the New World, or whether it's the West Indian population who came to Bristol. Bristol was one of the first multicultural cities in Britain.
some people say that tidal cities are moon cities. They're not driven by the sun, they're driven by the moon.
I think people tend not to think about that it's got that spiritual element to it. Who's been on it? Where have they come from? Where have they been? King Billy got off here after the Battle of the Boyne and went up to King's Weston House.
One of our celebrated sons of Bristol is Isambard Kingdom Brunel, and he himself is an immigrant. And his great achievement here was to create the floating harbour, and the floating harbour was all about dealing with the tide. The tide was the reason for Bristol's success, but it was also a huge problem. You couldn't bring big shipping in here because the tidal reach was so great, the shipping would just be laid on the bottom of the river, and the ships would break. So he had to control the tides. And Bristol sitting here on this incredibly powerful river that takes things out, that takes cargoes out and brings people back. It's the sort of the pulse of civilization, and it's done this for centuries. I think it's an extraordinary quality that the city has.
Should everybody be aware of its water heritage? I think the answer is yes, because I think the more people understand and appreciate why things are as they are, the better. So I think my generation and maybe my parents' generation have been party to a denigration of our respect for nature and for history. We've been very much engaged in the present day, in growth and expansion, in wealth. And I think perhaps part of what's going to happen, I hope, this year is a bit of reflection on what are our priorities. And our priorities in Bristol might well be water is part of our background. Do we give it the respect it's needed? No.